Welcome to the Darkstream, Vox Day, voxday.blogspot.com, and unauthorized.tv. Thanks for tuning in. Been a couple days, and frankly, I haven't streamed much because I haven't had much to say. I've mostly been thinking about the election tomorrow and doing my best to analyze the situation, looking at the final polls, etc., etc. We've been over the polls. We've been over the predictions. Obviously, as I've said, I expect Donald Trump to win re-election. I expect the polls to be proven to be completely wrong, and I think that Trump is going to win with a much larger margin in the Electoral College than he did in 2016. But that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. What we're going to talk about tonight is how to watch the reports and how to understand what's happening and who is actually winning, despite the best efforts of the media to try to keep that from you. And I've mentioned this on the blog. Some of you have probably seen this. I talk about something that I call my swing key system of analysis. And what that stands for is swing state, key county. Because what I learned last time around in 2016, that I was able to correctly ascertain the final winner at 9:43 p.m., hours before it was announced. And I wasn't just stating an opinion, I was absolutely certain that Donald Trump was going to win at that point for a very simple reason. The way that the Democrats' votes are counted is that they predominantly come in states that are contested, in swing states. They tend to come from one or two very large urban counties, and that's where the voter fraud happens. That's where you see frequently this technique that they use of holding back votes. This is how Al Franken won his last election as a senator. They held back some votes, figured out how many they needed, realized that they could produce that many, produced them, and then he ended up winning. That's this goes back to 1960 in Illinois at a bare minimum, may go back even further. And the way that it's played out is most significantly, and this is what I was watching in 2016, is in Broward County. Broward County, Florida is the second largest Democratic supporting county. Broward County is the one in yellow. Miami-Dade is the county in green right below it. And those two counties together represent 27% of the total Democratic vote in the state. Now, what you'll almost always see, and I predict you'll see happen tomorrow, is that Broward will be the last Florida county to report. It's always interesting that it's the last county to report because the Florida Panhandle is an hour after the rest of the state. And yet Broward never reports until the Panhandle vote is in. That's because that's where the fraud happens. And so the reason I was able to successfully calculate that Trump had won Florida is that I looked up on the Broward County site, the direct county site, how many registered voters they had. And once there weren't enough registered voters in the county to make up for the gap that Hillary Clinton had in the rest of the state, the result was mathematically certain. Miami-Dade had already reported. Now, Miami-Dade is larger, but they don't seem to have the same level of corruption that you see in Broward. And Broward is a more strongly Democratic county. It went, as you can see, 66.5% for Clinton versus 31% for Trump, whereas in Miami-Dade, Trump actually got 34%. Not a big difference, but it does show you where the primary difference is. So if you look, and there's something else that we should mention here, that if you look at the registrations, what's kind of fascinating is that in Broward, the Democratic, the new Democratic spacing on the word, registrations is 1% ahead of the Republicans. But what's fascinating is in Miami-Dade, Republicans are actually 5.6% ahead of the Democrats. Now, that doesn't mean that Trump is going to win Miami-Dade. He's not. But it does mean that the total number of new voters that are coming in is probably not going to be anywhere nearly enough to make a difference for Trump's lead in the rest of the state. So what this tells us, and the whole point of the key county, is that if the Democrat does not win enough support in that stronghold, he can't win the state. So for example, in Broward in 2008, Obama won 67%. In 2012, Obama won 67.2%. In 2016, when Trump beat Clinton, the Democratic vote dropped down to 66.1%. Now remember, we're talking about a place that about 14% of the Democrats' votes come from. So it's extremely important. It's much more important. A percent or two there is much more important than 10%, 15% in any other county. And so what we can say is that if Joe Biden does not win 67% in Broward, and if he doesn't win 65% in Miami-Dade, then he is not going to win Florida. So you want to watch, when you're watching the returns, they're going to obfuscate the results of the state. They're trying to avoid reporting the state results. But what they will report is they will report the county results. And even if the media doesn't report them, you can get the county results from the county itself. So look very carefully when the Florida results come in. Look at the counties and see if Biden is doing better than 67%, or better in Broward, or better than 65% in Miami-Dade. If he is, he's doing well. If he's not, he's almost certainly losing. So let's talk about what the swing states are. Florida is obvious. The other big one this time around is Pennsylvania. I don't pay attention to how the media define swing states because, of course, they define them based on the polls, and the polls are nonsense. What I define them by is how close they were the last time around. So Florida last time around wasn't actually as close as some of the other states. It was 49.1% for Trump, 47.8% for Hillary Clinton. Pennsylvania was closer, 48.8% for Trump, 47.6% for Hillary Clinton. The other states that I've identified as swing states are Michigan, which was 47.6% to 47.3%. It was very close, but went for Trump. And then obviously they have Wisconsin as well, 47.9% versus 47.3%, again for Trump. But one state that is not appearing as a swing state, but I believe it is a swing state this time. And not only do I believe it is a swing state, I think it's actually going to go for Trump, even though it has not gone for Republican as long as I can remember. You know, I'm from Minnesota. It's so far left that we didn't even have a Democratic Party. It's a DFL, Democratic Farmer Labor Party. And but despite that, you know, I can remember my brother calling me and saying, hey, I think Minnesota might go for Trump. And I said, it's crazy. He said, you haven't been here in a long time. It's changed. Anyhow, Hillary Clinton did win Minnesota 46.9% to 45.4%, but that was only a difference of, about 40,000 votes. And now with all of the problems with the Somalis, all of the problems with the George Floyd riots, et cetera, I expect that Trump is going to win Minnesota, but it's definitely, in my opinion, in the swing state category. So those are the swing states: Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And then there's also one other state with a county that I'm going to mention that I think is going to be worth keeping an eye on, not because it's a swing state, it's not, but because of the time that you can expect it to be reported. So we talked about Miami-Dade, and we talked about Broward in Florida. And so again, it was the magic number is 67 and 65 in Broward and Miami-Dade. Now, if we look at Pennsylvania, I'm on the wrong window. There we go. If we look at Pennsylvania, the key county is Philadelphia. Philadelphia is the biggest Democratic stronghold. It's the yellow county there. And they're talking about how, well, it's possibly not going to be reported for days and all this sort of thing. Well, that's because, of course, they're planning to try to find as many votes as they need. But it doesn't matter. We can tell from this model how things are going. Remember, even though Hillary Clinton won 82.4% of the vote there, she still lost the state. Now, when Obama won the state in 2008, he had 83% of the Philadelphia County vote. In 2012, he had 85.2% of the Philadelphia County vote. So what we can safely assume is that Joe Biden is going to need at least 83% in Philadelphia. If he's not at 83% in Philadelphia County, he's almost certainly not going to win the state. The next state that we'll look at is Michigan. And this one, as I mentioned, was very, very close. Wayne County, down in the southeast, is the most important county there. And remember, the reason that we've identified these counties as being crucial is because these are the epitome of the Democratic strength in the state. If Joe Biden does not perform strongly enough in these locations, he will not win. And so it makes a very useful metric because oftentimes the counties get reported and you have a good idea of what's going on in the counties before the entire state is tabulated. In Wayne County, the magic number is again 67%. You can see last time around, in 2016, Trump won the state. Hillary Clinton got 66.8% of the vote. Obama in 2008 got 74% and won, and got 73.1% in 2012. So it's interesting there, if you notice, that the demographics are actually are moving in the direction of the Republicans. Biden needs to reverse that. If he doesn't reverse that, he's going to lose Michigan. Now we're coming to my former home state of Minnesota. I have to admit, I always get a little bit of a, I wouldn't call it homesickness exactly, but I always just I just like to see the picture, the shape of the state. So anyhow, this is Minnesota, and Hennepin County is where Minneapolis is located. It's where all the Somalis are now. It's where Ilhan Omar is representing in Congress. It is the left of the left of the left, even in Minnesota. And what's really interesting about Minnesota is that the Iron Range, which you can see part of, it's the area up near the Lake Superior. It's the blue area up in the top. Kind of unusual that there's a outstate area that's strongly Democratic. But that's the Iron Range. It's where the old iron mines and other mines were. And it's always been very left. But what's interesting is that increasingly there's word that the Iron Range is going to go for Trump. If that happens, Trump will win Minnesota, no question. But the population up there is relatively sparse, so it's Hennepin that is the one that we have to keep an eye on. And the numbers in Hennepin are, again, they've dropped a little bit over time. In 2008, it was 64% for Obama. In 2012, it was 62.5% for Obama. And then in 2016, it was 63.1% for Clinton. And all of those were enough to carry the state for Minnesota. So what I believe the magic number to be there, given how close the vote was, is we're probably looking at 62% in Hennepin for Biden to win. If Biden doesn't get 62% in Hennepin County, then the chances are very, very high that Trump will win Minnesota and the Republicans will take Minnesota, which would be a major shock to pretty much everyone. Which takes us to Wisconsin. I almost left Wisconsin out for two reasons. Number one, it's a small state. Not very many electoral college votes, but it was very close, and obviously we want as many solid indicators as we can. What was a little tricky is that there's actually two counties in Wisconsin that you could keep track of, that it might make sense to keep track of. But Milwaukee is about almost half again larger than Dane County. And just in the interest of keeping things reasonably easy to keep track of, I decided just to focus on Milwaukee County. But if you're really interested in focusing on Wisconsin for whatever reason, you probably want to take a look at Dane County as well as Milwaukee. Just like in Florida, we keep an eye on both Broward and Miami-Dade. But Milwaukee County is the primary one here. 66.4% for Clinton in Milwaukee was not enough to hold the state for her, whereas 68% in 2008 and 66.8% in 2012 were enough to help Obama win Wisconsin. So I would, you could say that it might be the magic number might be as low as 66%, but I would put it at 67% just to be safe. Plus, that's the same as in Michigan and Florida, so it's easy to remember. Joe Biden is almost certainly going to need 67% of the vote if he's going to win. And this brings us to the final. So those are all of the swing state key counties, in my opinion. You've got Broward and Miami-Dade in Florida. You've got Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. You've got Wayne in Michigan. You've got Hennepin in Minnesota. And you've got Milwaukee, and if you like, Dane in Wisconsin. So what's this last county, and why did I pick it? Well, one of the problems that we have is that these are all very large urban counties. And because they're often holding votes back and waiting to report, they're not going to produce the reliable numbers, the final numbers, as early as we might like. And we might have to wait a while before we know what happens in Miami-Dade. Philadelphia, they're saying they're going to take days to report. Hennepin and Wayne and Milwaukee are all in the central time zone. So they're going to be at least an hour later than anything on the East Coast. So what I was looking for is something from a county in a competitive state a county that represented a Democratic stronghold in the state, but was not necessarily a giant urban county. I mean, obviously it was going to be somewhat urban, but hopefully something that would be a version in miniature of what these other counties are, because it might give us an accurate picture of what's happening. And I looked at Virginia. Virginia has been considered a swing state in the past, but I wanted a state that actually went for Trump, because what we're looking for is to see how strong the Biden vote actually is versus what the polls are telling it it's going to be. And so I ended up choosing North Carolina, which the media considers to be a swing state. I don't. I think I'm quite confident that it's going to go for Trump. But Mecklenburg County in North Carolina is nearly as strong for Hillary Clinton as Broward. In fact, it's the 2016 results are almost exactly the same as Miami-Dade, 63.3%. But the advantage is it's on the East Coast time. It's got fewer than 500,000 residents, so it's not quite as big. It's not quite as urban, and nobody's paying any attention to Mecklenburg. It's Broward and Philadelphia. These are places where there's a tremendous amount of scrutiny, a tremendous amount of media scrutiny and stuff, and so naturally they're not going to necessarily tell you what's going on there as quickly. Mecklenburg, there's no reason for them to not tell you how things are going. Plus, it has an interesting pattern in that it's actually gravitating more Democratic over the last 3 elections, unlike some of the others. So Hillary Clinton won with 63.3%, but lost the state. So that's worth noting. Obama won the state with 62%, and then lost the state with 60.8%. So that indicates to me that the magic number in Mecklenburg for Joe Biden is around 64%. It may actually be a little higher than that, but if he doesn't reach at least 64%, we can be very confident that he's not going to win North Carolina. And that should theoretically give us the earliest possible picture where we can start to say with some degree of confidence that the election is over. It won't actually be over, but it will be our first strong indicator that either Donald Trump has won re-election or the polls were sufficiently correct that Joe Biden has beaten him. Now, a lot of people will try to, pull back their predictions. You see this with all the polls. The polls are tightening. They're not tightening. They're just trying to preserve their credibility for next time. I'm not concerned about that. And so that's why I'm quite happy to say what I think, to make my predictions, and then just, stand by them. And if that causes people to lose confidence in my opinions next time, well, so be it. They should have less confidence in my opinions if I'm wrong. But I will point out that I did predict that Trump was going to win in 2016. I was one of the few people who did that, and I was one of the even smaller number of people who predicted that consistently. I never went back on that. And I am more confident today, the day before the election, that Donald Trump is going to win in 2020 than I was that he was going to win in 2016. And I was very confident that he was going to win in 2016. I'm even more confident now, whether you look at the voter registrations, whether you look at the towns being walled up, et cetera, et cetera. you're seeing the same pattern. If it weren't for the polls reporting, that Biden's ahead by 11 points here and 7 points there and 1,100 points there, nobody would believe for a second that he was winning. And so go out there tomorrow, vote with confidence, and stop by the blog, and we will be updating these numbers and tracking these counties. And my goal is to be able to accurately conclude who won the election before 9:30 p.m. East Coast. So whether that's possible, I don't know, but I look forward to seeing how it goes, and I hope that the next 4 years will be much, much better for the United States than the last 4 years. So happy Trump slide, and we will see you on the blog. I'm Vox Day, and this is the Darkstream. And that didn't work, but we'll try it again.